Today's session is focused on how we can enable access to research, science, and innovation for low middle-income countries and small island developing states to strengthen their capabilities in climate change, adaptation, mitigation, resilience, and response. The presence of our Director General, Dr. Chu Dong-yu, is an indication of the importance of this topic. Before I invite the Director General to join us here on the podium, let me share a few housekeeping rules. The event is live streamed and recorded. It will be made available for anyone who wanted to attend but is unable to join us live. Attendees who are joining virtually can use the question and answer chat box for questions. Please remember to use your name, include your name, organization, and to whom the question is addressed. Also, please keep your phones on silent mode, and we would like to request the speakers to mute their microphones when they are not speaking. Now, I would like to invite the Director General, Dr. Chu Dong-yu, to provide some opening remarks. As you are aware, Dr. Chu Dong-yu has brought to us the innovation of this World Food Forum, including this particular segment on science and innovation as part of the forum. And now I have the pleasure to give Director General the floor. Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Angelique. Good morning, everyone, from here, in person and online both. I'm so delighted to come to here. And I said, I was a scientist. They occupied my golden time, 25 years. So, but I always encourage my scientist colleagues, jump out of the box. Otherwise, you are only pure scientist for your own interest, for your own curiosity. Science should be help the people to improve life and livelihood. Otherwise, nobody, no politician, no investor willing to invest more. So, of course, FAO asked by our members to do more and better. And how? We depend on you, scientists. Because scientists is one of the most important driving force to lead the change and the transformation. For that, we have that forum, World Food Forum, and the 3 pillars. How important is one is science innovation together with investment and youth engagement and empowerment. Of course, youth include male and female. Yeah? So it's not only young at age, also young at heart, like me, and like Samara here, DDG7. And so the focus of this year's Science and Innovation Forum is on climate action. Again, climate action. It's not only talking, from one talk to another, from 1 year meeting to another meeting, we need action, especially related to agri-food system and rural development. This is not only a timely discussion, it's Agenda 1 on action. Climate-related disasters are frequent from the deadly flooding in Libya, India, Pakistan, intensely storm in Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, not Zambia, and intensify the heat waves across the world. I mentioned a few, because even in Europe, during the past 4 years, heat wave in the Netherlands and Germany, and then come here it's flooding early this year. So you can imagine in Mediterranean Sea, we still have the extreme weather. Nobody predicted 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Between 2008 and 2018, only 10 years, the impact of this type of disaster cost the agricultural sector in developing economy over $108 billion. This figure is, of course, I think it's very much underestimated. Yeah, we know a lot of disaster is not measurable. Yeah, the impact of climate crisis are affecting our ecosystems, not only food production, also people's livelihood and people's life itself. particularly in the low and middle income countries, small island state, not only small island developing state, small island state the same. No matter how much money, yeah, because you are so fragile, it's so vulnerable when you face a disaster. This means that we need the bold, ambitious climate action now to scale up the action to strengthen the resilience, adaptation, and the reduction of risk across agribusiness and the rural areas. But for the climate action to be effective, it must be based on the sound research, science, and innovation, and especially data-based, not based on the feeling or imagination. It cannot adopt the one-size-fits-all approach. We need to localize all the package of solutions. My message today to you is so simple. In our climate action, we must to be inclusive and to continue to be innovative and to be holistic way and approach with responsible investment and improvement of infrastructure. We are not just improve the resilience based on the empty words and the commitment. We need the investment on the ground, improve the infrastructure, and build the capacity to be ready against all the disaster and the potential risks. And for that, I hope you can enjoy your dialogue, come some kind of solutions, not individually, not silos, should cross sectors, cross economic, social, environment dimensions together. Jump out of yourself, of course, based on your professional advantages, but not only limited yourself on your own territory. Through the dialogue, you can cross your sectors, cross your interdisciplinary approach. That makes science work, makes technology profitable to the people, especially to the investors. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General, for highlighting the importance of science and technology to walk the talk towards agri-food transformation, as well as the investment needed to build resilience, and inviting us all to partner together to work towards sustainable development. I now have the pleasure to invite Mr. Vilimani Manu, Chief Executive Officer of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Forests of Tonga, to deliver a presentation to set the scene.
This morning, I'd like to present a very unique situation from our distant, far country. Of most of these countries are 99% sea and only 1% group of small islands. We are situated at the edge of a tectonic plate. And of course, volcanic eruption is part of our life. And we are sitting beside the second deepest ocean trench. And fortunately, we are sitting on the part that is moving on top of the Pacific plate. But climate change in our part of the world is increasing number of cyclones. The frequency and intensity is increasing. It used to be in a 20-year interval. Now, the latest one was in 2014, 2018, and 2020. El Nino droughts, we had one in 2014, and we declared another one this year in October. And of course, there should be a big cyclone next year, always associated with El Nino droughts. In addition of that, when we met up with other countries and compare the sea level rise, most of our Pacific neighbors are around 5 to 6 centimeters per year. But for some reason, we have twice as much, 11 to 12 centimeters a year. And one geologist was explaining that part of our tectonic plate is moving downwards as the two plates met up. The increasing temperature also reduced the number of coconuts. Coconuts is a tree of life in our part of the world. And also, we are, like I said, we're having the rising temperature, rising sea levels, and also the increasing number of cyclones and El Nino droughts. And the loss and damage are increasing, and the number of years to recover is also increasing. Last year, we had the biggest marine volcanic eruption in the world in the last 100 years. It was about 200 megatons of TNT, and the plume was around 50-something kilometers high. And there were only, fortunately, there was only 2 deaths in Tonga. And because of the tsunami, it reached Peru, and there were 2 also deaths in Peru. That's how big the volcanic eruption is. The loss of damages, of course, as I said before, was around 90 million US dollars. And for some reason, because it's a marine volcanic eruption, most of the plume was water from the sea. And we only had about 3 centimeters thick of ash covered the whole of the small islands beside. And the other thing is most of the toxic elements in the ash was low, and the highest ions was sodium chloride from the sea. The science innovation that we are doing, mostly in the resilience and also in the recovery, post-disaster recovery, as I said before. Biodiversity, of course, as everyone else. The tolerant to drought, cyclone, and also the seawater. The circular zero-waste farming system and the smart agriculture farming system impacts. And also they were included some of the traditional knowledge in farming, crop rotation and mixed farming, because and also we have a 1 million tree planting for mitigation and adaptation. And I'm also looking forward because most of our storage of food is on fresh in the farm. So we're looking into processing and hope to store food a bit longer, as everyone does in the world. For the recovery, most of the recovery, we have subsidized land preparations and seeds, and also 2 weeks old chicks to the farms, hope to recover them. And our latest one is the home gardening. This is because women are not traditional farmers, but with the home gardening, we seems to be engaging the women because they are the ones in charge of this household. And the other thing, we always promote working in groups. There's traditional farming groups and also weaving groups, because some of the weaker ones are being helped, assisted by the stronger members of the group. So, from Tonga, that's about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manu, for sharing with us the experience of Tonga and setting the scene for us, and particularly mentioning how climate change is an existential threat for some small island developing states, and also sharing some of the innovations that have been used by Tonga with the many multiple disasters that it has been confronting in the past few years, including the tragic volcanic eruption of last year. Now we will move to a panel session, and I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Liushang Liu from the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. He is the Executive Director of the Institute of Crop Scientists at the Academy. His biography is up on the screen, so I no need to repeat it, and you can go ahead and read it. Professor Liu, in a single generation, China has transitioned itself from a low-income country to the world's second largest economy. What role did science and innovation play in the agri-food systems transformation in China? And how can China leverage these capacities to further its green transition? Professor Liu, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's a very good question. China have feeding 80% of the world population by using only 9% of the world farmland and 6% of the world fresh water. And China is the first developed country to achieve the UN SDG 2 goal, zero hunger. So this, I think this successful story of China in ensuring national food security and poverty reduction provides a very good experience and examples for other nations for the transformation of the agro systems. Okay? Yes, and the science technology play a very, very important roles to drive this transformation. I would like to show you the data of the scientific contribution rate in China. So the contribution rate in 1978 is only less than 30%. Okay, and last year, 2022, the scientific innovation contribution rate to the agricultural productivity reached to 61%, yeah, double. So this is very important, significant importance to show the scientific and innovation roles. Okay, and also this resulted from a lot of the new technologies, including the new seeds, okay, new fertilizer technologies, and new cropping systems, even for the modern mechanization technologies, among which the seed technology is the best one, is the important one. So in China, for example, the new variety contribution to the yield increase is about, the rate is about 45, sometimes over, okay? In which, for example, 50% contribution to the yield increase. So now in China, we have developed and officially released 70,000 new varieties in the past 40 years for the farmers' uses, okay? Increased a very, very important increasement, okay? So the new seeds and the farming system is very important science and technology innovation for to drive the agronomy, agri-food system transformation, okay? Now recent years, for about the new transition to the green development, I think we need to, it is necessary to address again the seed innovation and farmland protection. Okay, farmland protection is very, very serious component in China. So the central government to promote attention to protect our farmland because very limited uses resources of farmland currently. The new seed innovation and the farm land protection is a very important issue in the future. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Liu, for sharing with us the experience of China, and in particular how the contribution of science has nearly doubled in the last 40 years, and specifically providing the example of seed technology and how that leads to new seed varieties, which in turn leads to increasing yields. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Patrick Okori, Executive Secretary of the Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture. With the last speaker, Mr. Okari's bio is in the background. Patrick, you represent a consortium of over 163 universities from 40 countries in Africa. As you prepare to host the 19th annual general meeting of RUForum later this month, what would you say is the biggest challenge and lesson learned in developing the research, science, innovation, and capacities in Africa? Patrick, over to you.
Thank you very much for your question. Resources is a big issue in anything you are going, any decisions you're going to make. And Roof Forum was actually created to address, among others, resourcing. In this case, through networking, we cost leverage. We share what we have, both in the South and with the North. So one of the big challenges, there are about 3 issues that are affecting the ability of Africa to harness science for development. The first is, of course, very non-coherent investments. And all this is back to how we plan for both the present and the futures, to the extent that you have very fragmented and in many cases small investments that are not well thought through to the end, or you have gaps in between because certain types of partnerships are missing. I think the second thing is that science cannot be done in isolation. Science is done, in my own opinion, through a much more globalized ecosystem. Knowledge has no borders. And in many instances, investments in science as a whole are a little bit weak in the global south. And so, again, this is a challenge that affects Africa. How do you leverage knowledge, science, and technology developed elsewhere to affect the rate at which you can use them, first to build your own capacity, but also to deliver them as solutions down to the end users? And finally, it's the whole challenge of a very weak innovation system. Most of the time, about 40 to 60% of the intelligentsia, the academia, are not actually involved in science innovation. They're just in the universities doing their stuff, like I used to do. And so having all of this as part of a national innovation system would marshal all that effort. So the disintegration of weak innovation systems are the big challenges, really. So those are the 3 areas I see.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for highlighting the key challenges. In particular, you mentioned these issues of the non-coherent investment. The investment is fragmented. I think here we have a very good program at FAO, the Hand in Hand initiative, which is basically one of the points is to get the investment really where it needs to go. And so it's coordinating that investment. There's also the issue about leveraging science and capacities, and the need to strengthen the innovation system within the Global South. Thank you very much for this. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Esther Esteban Rodrigo, Director, Spanish National Institute for Agricultural and Food Research and Technology. Her biography is here and on the slide, as for others. Esther, based on what you've heard from the experiences from China and Africa, what are the major differences you see with that of the research and innovation landscape in Spain? Esther, over to you.
Well, in particular in the fruit and vegetable sector, Spain is a leader, I think, at the global level. Our companies are ready to use any innovation that is in the market because they know that it will have a compensation in their benefits. As an example, this month we celebrated a fair which is called Fruit Attraction. It's together with a similar fair in Berlin. It's one of the biggest in the world about fruits and vegetables. And you can see there with more than 2,000 exhibitors, more than 100,000 visitors, you can see there the level of innovation in this sector, which is incredible. Not only in the production of the fruits, but all the products that come with them, like packaging, post-harvest treatments, everything. So it's incredible, the level of innovation that you can see there. And from everywhere, there are exhibitors from all over the world. As an example, in the plant breeding sector, I can say that in Spain, 80% of the companies have an R&D department. So their investments on R&D are around 14 to 20% of their benefits, which is a lot. And And the ones that are too small to have an R&D department, they can rely on the public research institutions. So there are lots of collaborations with public institutes, research institutes as my institute, INEA. We have contracts and any kind of collaboration with private companies to help them to adapt innovations for their needs. INEA belongs to a much bigger institution, which is the SIG. It's the main research institution in Spain for any area of knowledge. And in that CSIC, we have a unit that is specialized in innovation and transfer for technology to the companies. So this unit in CSIC helps researchers to find the way to transform their scientific knowledge into innovations that are useful to improve people's lives. And they help also companies to find the best solution for their needs. And they find also the way of protecting the intellectual properties, which is not always patents. It could be business secrets, or in the case of plant varieties, there is a special regime for protection of the varieties. So, I mean, it's, we are talking of one of the most important sectors in the Spanish economy. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Esther. Thank you. It seems that the landscape for innovation is very rich in Spain. Is that they have a lot of investment made. Not only do the larger companies have a high percentage of their income based on R&D, but also there's a lot of public investment in this, and smaller companies can also, and agri-food smallholders can also benefit from the research done in the public institution. So it seems like it's a very developed landscape for research and development. It is now my pleasure to introduce Professor Paulo Alberto Nussensweig, Provost of Research and Innovation of the University of São Paulo, USP. Dr. Paulo, University of São Paulo is one of the most prestigious universities in Brazil. Approximately 18% of Brazil's scientific production comes from the USP, and 20% of the highly funded startups in Brazil were founded by USP alumni. The university also hosts one of the largest artificial intelligence centers in Brazil. How did USP manage to create such an innovative research ecosystem? Over to you, Dr. Paulo.
Thank you very much. It's a huge pleasure to be here. I would say probably the most important word is engagement, and attracting young, talented people. From the foundation, the University of São Paulo, which was founded almost 90 years ago, has been very international. We were founded by a group of, we brought over a group of scholars from Europe, and that gave us a perspective that research is a universal value. Essentially, building knowledge is for the entirety of society. We are in the richest state in the country of São Paulo, and again, people of vision have created a state funding agency for research, development, and innovation called FAPESP, the State Funding Agency, which has receives 1% of the state revenue. This is written in our state constitution, and FAPESP has complete autonomy in deciding how those funds are distributed. The University of São Paulo, given its importance, attracts about half of FAPESP's funding, which is very significant in the country. Since the 80s, the state universities in São Paulo also have academic and administrative autonomy, which is, again, we don't have to answer to immediate interests. We are able to have a longer term vision. Speaking more specifically of the importance we have in terms of the entrepreneurship and innovation landscape in Brazil, again, young talent. This is not something that has been directed by the university administration. There was a initiative that was created by students at our university, students and former students, which is called NEU, the Núcleo de Empreendedorismo of the University of São Paulo. And I have to be very honest, you know, even myself, a professor of physics, until the end of 2021, I was not aware of this initiative by these students. And yet, they have been involved in teaching. They have engaged with, I think, more than 300,000 people from our community in fostering this innovation. Still, we have a long way. We need, as was mentioned, you know, we are a university where obviously people have academic freedom, and so a lot of our faculty are involved in their research without looking more broadly in connection with society. So we have to engage more faculty in innovation and entrepreneurship, and we're working very hard for that. But I think one of the essences is that we're a very, very diverse university. You can think of any field of knowledge, it's represented at the University of São Paulo. And we have a view now that we have to engage responsibly with society in broad terms and lead an innovation agenda which is not restricted to technological innovation, but is completely general, and helping design, for instance, public policy is part of that agenda. So bringing ideas from, bringing, you know, concepts from ideas to inception, that's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paulo, for highlighting the experience of USP and how the research being a fundamental universal value for the university, and how it also attracted, let's say, state funding, being the richest state in Brazil, and having that the FABESP and that large amount of funding that's attracted by the university. You mentioned twice the issue of attracting youth talent or engaging youth, and I think it's very timely as we're here in the World Food Forum, where we have a big youth presence, and this is precisely what we're trying to do here at FAO with this forum. And lastly, you mentioned how former students of the USP or alumnus, they came together and they formed this Núcleo de Empreendedorismo, and that helps bring all the different parts together. It's not necessarily the university-led, but it's someone that the seeds were planted by the university, and now it's grown to what it is. So I think this is a fantastic experience to be sharing with us. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Bente Torrensen. She's the Chief Executive Officer, Managing Director of Nofima. Nofima is the leading food research institute in Norway. So Nofima is operated by a business with Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Fisheries, as it is the largest owner. Can you tell us a bit more about the setup structure of funding of Nofima, and what are some of the key institutional innovations and lessons learned at Nofima that may be of relevance to other countries?
Yes, thank you for that question, and also I really appreciate being here. So Nofima is part of the Norwegian Research Institute sector, and Nofima, as all the other research institutes, are there not for ourselves, but we have a mission. So the mission of Nofima is to be the research institute creating knowledge and innovations for the food industries. So that is land-based food industry, aquaculture, and fisheries. And also, of course, in all questions for the society that is related to food and food systems. So we are a shareholding company, and in all practical senses, we are run as a private company. And and that also makes us very, directed towards our mission. Our vision is sustainable food for all. So that means that all our research, together with industry, is to create a more sustainable food system, economically, social, and environmental. And also for all means we have to contribute to produce more food. So Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries are our largest shareholder. We also have two other shareholders who also represent public food stakeholders. So it's a land-based food industry and also a representative from aquaculture. What is different from other shareholding companies is that none of our shareholders take any dividends from the company. So everything that we manage to create in surplus is taken back into the institute to develop the type of infrastructure, knowledge that we think, get insight from the industry that they need around the next corner. So we have to always be a bit ahead because we have to compete. Because back to our funding structure. So some of our funding is base funding, like I think many of the public institutes in Europe have. But the rest we compete. So we compete with universities, other institutes in Norway, internationally, with European projects. We also have two large funds in Norway for aquaculture research, fisheries research, and for land-based industry research, which is also something that we compete for. So we have to be on our toes, so to speak. But our research focus is to develop solutions for the food industries in the perspective of sustainable circular food systems. Everything we do is focused in that direction. And we really see the advantage of being a research institute combining the three food sectors: fisheries, aquaculture, and land-based food industry. Moving now towards more a systemic understanding of sustainable food systems, agriculture is ahead. So we need to bring the aquaculture and fishery sectors also on board. So that is our main focus right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for stressing Nofima's commitment to producing sustainable agri-food systems, and how basically some of the advantages of how it's run as a private company, and it also has a part where while it does receive public funding, it also needs to compete for funding, and then makes you always have to be on the cutting edge. Another very interesting point that I'd like to highlight from your reply to the question is how there are no dividends for the shareholders and everything is reinvested. And I think that's a very unique experience, which I think can be an example for all. Thank you very much. We're now going to run to a second round of questions for our panelists. And I will now give the floor to Mr. Vilimani Manu, who presented the setting of the scene. Do you believe an institutional model such as Nofima would work in Tonga? Is there a similar institution or organization catering to the research and innovation needs of your country? Over to you, Mr. Manu.
Thank you. Our research institution is within the government, Ministry of Agriculture, and also the Ministry of Fisheries. And most of the technical assistance that we've been fortunate to have was from FAO, technical assistance. And also we do engage with nearby countries, with Australian scientific institutes, New Zealand, Japan, and also the People's Republic of China. And a few years back, we also had some students doing their PhD research from Wageningen University, in the Netherlands, and also from the University of Copenhagen. So that's how we manage our scientific knowledge in Tonga, mostly from technical assistance. But like I said, 55 decades of assistance, technical assistance from FAO is the main one that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manu, and thank you for highlighting that you receive important technical assistance from FAO, which we'll continue to provide, and also that there's a lot of you receive a lot of bilateral support, and you have capacity development through the participation of a lot of doctorate programs from the Netherlands and other institutions such as Wageningen. I will now like to pass over to Patrick with the next question. So just about what is Reforum's experience in exchanging university, local communities, and farmers on climate research and technology development efforts? Does it help or hinder the innovation process?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So Reforum's sphere of influence is very diverse, Africa. Africa is very diverse in terms of people, farming systems, food systems, all that. And so once you start talking about climate change and the research, it's also important to understand you've got to think locally to solve the problem, because one size fits all just will not cut it. So what we do as Reforum is about 4 things. The first is to broker the knowledge that is necessary to address this. And that knowledge can be within the region or it can be outside of the region. Region, I mean Africa. So north, south, 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 all those types of things we do. The second one is to focus our attention on the sectors we think we have a high chance to trigger change. And a colleague already mentioned youth, young people. So 60% of Africa is less than 30 years old. That's a large population. And then the farming population, almost 60% again of that farming population is done really by women. And they have their own challenges. So if you put across those 2 layers, gender lens, and then you also put the diversity lens, it means you must downscale whatever you're doing to address the question of renewability and the question of whether or not they can afford the technology. So what we do as Reforum is we work with communities. We enable our universities to implement what we call community action research, so that they work with these communities to learn, number 2, to adopt, and number 3, to promote the science solutions that we are generating. And we do that in a broad ecosystem, which brings in the universities, brings in the international centers, brings in local contexts from the community CBOs, the community-based organization, and the farm organizations themselves. So that way, we are able to downscale from a very high level of good knowledge down to implementation and focus this on the people, the population, the young women and men who are the farmers that will feed the continent and the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for sharing with us these important points about not one size fitting all, and the fact that there's a need, at least Reforum's strategy is to focus on those that have a higher chance for change, and you particularly highlighted women and youth, and this is a very diverse sector, bringing them in. So it's a bit complex, so you have to downscale to work with the communities to learn, to adopt, and to promote, and all of this needs to be done in partnerships with academia, civil society, and others. I would now like to turn to Professor Liu once again. Professor Liu, Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences is one of the largest agricultural scientific research organizations in China. It has promoted more than 300 new agricultural varieties and 200 new technologies. How can institutions such as CAS play a role in making such innovations and technologies more readily available to other low middle income countries and small island developing states? Over to you, Professor Liu.
Thank you for a very good question. So you said, just said, scientific achievements is made during the 13th five-year plan from 2016 to 2020 in CIS. Actually, Chinese scientists have made remarkable achievements through the diversity in agriculture situation in China. I say it should be adapted to any kind of the developing country in the world. So, for example, under the FAO, the South-South Cooperation Framework, more than 1,000 Chinese agricultural achievements, technologies have been transferred and popularized in the developed countries. They help in the countries increase the yield by 30 to 60% increase about. And also for the hybrid rice variety, for example, more than 14,000 scientists for the developed country scientists have been trained for about 80 countries to popularize the hybrid rice to increase the yield. So, and I think it's a very, very good example in the past through the South-South collaboration framework, thanks to the FAO and the platform, and also for the Chinese government proposed the Belt Road Initiative. Okay, you may heard yesterday Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed again. China will continue to implement Belt Road Initiative science innovation action plan. Okay, to increase the joint laboratory construction in the developed countries, and including training more and more young scientists working on the agronomy, agri-food systems. I think in addition, the more and more pay more attention to the integrated solution to assure the sustainable development of the agri-food system. For example, Chinese government have paid more attention to integrated science innovation, education, and talented people, talented resources, the three components into one. This is the final solution to ensure the sustainable and high quality development of our agri-food system. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much to share with us the experience of China and how you're particularly through South-South and triangular cooperation, China is helping agricultural innovations come to these countries. And here I would mention that with the FAO, China South-South Cooperation Trust Fund, small island developing states will be benefiting from some funding opportunities and the experience of China in order to transform their agri-food systems. There's also a through line I see through a lot of the presentations about the issue of young people and engaging young people and bringing them to the table. So I think this is something that it's a real takeaway from this session. I now turn to Esther. Esther, can you share with us how organizations such as Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gases brings countries and partners together in research collaborations and capacity development among scientists and other practitioners?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The Global Research Alliance is an organization, it's a framework to bring together scientists from all over the world to work on how to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases in agriculture, and at the same to help to have soils with a great capacity for carbon sequestration and to meet the objectives of food security overall. There are more than 60 countries belonging to the GRA and more than 3,000 scientists collaborating. So it's a great framework to start collaborations, to look for investments on research in this area. And there are initiatives in the GRA which are very interesting, especially for these young people. In particular, there's an initiative called cliff grass, that it gives opportunity to young researchers, that grad students from developing countries, to spend at least several months in the labs from developed countries, and giving them the opportunity to know other cultures, to know other ways of to do research and to start collaborations. But we do not only collaborate with the GRA, there are other initiatives in which we participate. One of them, it's a unique initiative called Fontagro with countries from Latin America and Spain. In that initiative, 25 years ago, these countries allocated money in the Inter-American Development Bank, and with that money, they don't have to allocate any more money. They invest the money, the bank invests the money with the return. There are open calls for research in agriculture, trying to improve farming in families in Latin America especially. And there is another initiative in which we participate also, which is called PRIMA. It's for the Mediterranean area. It's the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area. It's also very interesting because there is a certain amount of money from the European Union in this initiative, but also all the countries that participate have to allocate money for these calls. These are open calls also for research in agriculture and also water management. And what is important about this initiative is that all the countries that participate, they do it under the principle of equal footing. It's not easy to participate in the same way from a country from the European Union and from the country from the South Mediterranean area. But for that reason, a lot of effort is put on capacity building, training researchers to write a good proposal, it's a very good experience because then a lot of trust is gained between countries from the north and the south, researchers from the north and the south, and lots of walls are broken, and you see that the quality of the science that is made in the countries from the south is as good as the ones that is made in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther, for sharing all these initiatives such as Fontagro, and how you're also bringing in young researchers and building capacities by spending time in labs and having collaborations. You mentioned in particular the initiative of Fontagro, which is through the Inter-American Development Bank, and how there's open calls for research. And lastly, the most interesting part I think you mentioned is that all countries, when they participate in this, they're on equal footing. So there's no differentiation. And I think this is an exciting example to be replicated. I now turn to Dr. Paulo. Dr. Paulo, the University of São Paulo has established several international partnerships with many countries. What do you think some of the must-haves for a successful research partnership are? Over to you.
Well, thank you for the question, and I think it's an important one in such a setting. First of all, curiosity is a human trait we find everywhere. Sharing curiosity and learning with others is just a huge joy. And so that's how we start building our partnerships. But in our times, we face challenges, and I can name a few: the climate crisis, food security, managing international conflicts, which we are seeing very seriously right now. These challenges cannot be solved by individual countries. They are global and they require global action. I would say that the best international collaborations are based on common interests. We share this passion, this curiosity, but also on common needs. And furthermore, on combining complementary skills. We don't have it all in Brazil. We don't have it all in Italy. We don't have it all in Norway or Spain, in Africa, in China. We need each other. I would give an example of a successful collaboration, an endeavor that is going on right now at the University of São Paulo. We have a research center on greenhouse gas innovation, which was created because one of the researchers at the engineering school in São Paulo spent some time collaborating with people at the Imperial College London, established these contacts, and then they started a project understanding how important research in Brazil would be for renewable energies and biodiversity and whatnot. Now we have partnerships between both academics within our university, many different institutes are involved in this project, but also with industries and industries in different countries. For example, we have a center which is supported by the funding agency of the state of São Paulo, together with Shell, began with Shell. Just recently, we had an agreement signed with Total Énergie from France. And right now we have a huge project to understand how we can leverage on our country's experience with ethanol from sugarcane and converting ethanol into hydrogen at the station, at the fueling station, right? This is something which is ongoing and it's attracting interest from a lot of people. So this is an example of very basic research, understanding, and going into the development of something that can be useful for mankind and leveraging on something which is specific to our country. We are producing sugarcane and producing ethanol from sugarcane and making the best use of it. At the University of São Paulo, we are now even more aggressive in trying to bring over international collaborations into the university, having internationalization at home, the exposure to scholars from different countries. So we have a Pasteur Institute. There's an international center for genetics and bioengineering, ICGB, and we're opening a center with the French CNRS. So one of the questions I think which is key is how can the collaboration be unique? What is a problem that we can solve together that we would not solve separately? And one where the partnership brings in a unique form of collaboration where no other place would be able to do that. That's what I would say. It's not a specific recipe, but it's a way of thinking.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paulo, for that experience and just mentioning how we have global problems and these demand global solutions, and we need to work together for this, and how there's a need to combine complementary skills, which is key. And you mentioned a specific example of a research center that was instituted in Brazil on greenhouse gases that was done together with Imperial College, but now has brought in other partners, not only from academia, but private sector companies across the globe. So the innovations that can emerge from these partnerships, the questions that need to be asked in order to establish them is about the uniqueness of the collaboration and how it's only the partners that are coming together that can provide that unique solution to this. So thank you very much. I now will pass the floor to Bente. Bente, Nofima has customers from over 34 countries and nearly 30% of its research is funded by the private sector. What are the incentives for customers, in particular industry actors, to collaborate with Nofima? Over to you, Bente.
Thank you. So, as was said earlier today, knowledge has no boundaries. And I think especially within the food sectors, this is really the case. And I would like to highlight the way that we work with supporting the customers within aquaculture, because from the Norwegian perspective at least, the aquaculture industry is really one of the most global ones. And the ones that operate in Norway also operate around the globe. That is feed companies, farming companies, and food processing companies. And what we see is some of the parts of the aquaculture industry is very industrialized with solutions with Atlantic salmon, for example, in Norway. And by collaborating with aquaculture companies in other parts of the world, we have the insight, we have many times been involved in developing the solutions, and then we can come in and help and support the development for other species, maybe then avoiding doing the same mistakes over that we have been making. We also see that there are companies around the world, primarily from the agriculture side, that are interested in coming into the aquaculture area. So then they contact us and they say, we have this, especially within the feed development, there are a lot of similarities between species. So then they contact us and they ask, could you in your system test our ingredient? Will it work within aquaculture as a proof of concept, and then go back and try it in different species. There's also another example that we historically have been working a lot with international collaboration, and that is within breeding and breeding programs in aquaculture. So there's a huge potential in aquaculture. I don't know if you know, but it's less than 20% of the species being used in aquaculture globally today that is in a systematic breeding program. So here it's a huge potential to increase productivity and value creation just by developing a breeding program. But as you know, it's not just, because developing breeding programs is a quite major investment. And here the private-public partnerships come into play. So by collaborating with public funding in the beginning, coming in when the industry matures with more private company investments, and then after a while the breeding companies can fly by themselves. This we have seen with several species. We have now in Norway an example with Atlantic cod that is publicly funded a breeding program, and now the industry is developing and can come in and start to do investments. But it takes patience. But all these private-public partnership solutions, sharing knowledge from industrial innovations, sharing knowledge also with how to ensure good animal health and welfare across borders, and to then contribute with developing sustainable food system across the world is our mission.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bente, for sharing the experience of Nofima and how its attractiveness, and in particular, you focus on the aquaculture industry and how countries and companies can benefit from the solutions developed by Nofima and maybe replicate them or adapt them, as we were reminded by Patrick, not one size fits all, but adapt them to the different particularities of the country. You mentioned in particular the issue of breeding programs and the fact that this requires a pretty heavy investment. And so having this public-private partnership makes you a little bit ahead of the game and providing that advice to those that are interested in going forward. And you also mentioned that there are other sectors that are also requesting assistance from NOFEMA and to see how they can adapt the model to their particular sector outside of agriculture. Now we have some time for a question and answer session. I'll be looking here in the room to see if anybody has a question. I also know there are people online, and as I mentioned at the beginning, you can please put your question in the chat box and the question and answer chat box. I see our the ambassador from Eritrea. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, for providing me the floor. And I really also appreciate for all the panelists. They have given us a lot of new information. And thank you so much again. Well, many research has been conducted in all the universities and also in other global research institutions, and many technologies and particular varieties has been produced so far. And of course, our final objective is to secure food security and nutrition. And this could be achieved particularly by the small-scale farmers, because we know everybody, the small-scale farmers in the whole world, they produce a lot and they contribute a lot to food security. However, my main question is that since there are a lot of new varieties which can produce a lot, which can resist the drought, which can resist even pests and diseases and so on and so forth, to what extent can you suggest, or to what extent can you propose that these new varieties reach to the small-scale farmers, particularly in the developing countries? Of course, if they can get access to these new varieties, definitely they can produce a lot. And if there is any new strategy, particularly in the future, new strategies, what should be done? What could be done so that the small-scale farmers, particularly in the developing countries, have access to these new varieties particularly? Because definitely if they can get this, and then if there is also the technologies, if they know it, of course they can produce a lot and we can achieve food security on time. But this is not the perspective at this point of time. So if you can propose how many % of the new varieties reach to the small-scale farmers? And second one, if there are hindrances, how can we solve them? Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you. Is it this question directed to a specific person or just the panel in general?
No, the question is not for a specific person.
Okay.
For all the scientists.
Okay, for all of you here. So who would like to break the ice with this question? Looking around and not seeing anybody.
Maybe I try to.
Professor Liu, please.
So it's a very good question, I think. So as I mentioned, new variety is the core technology for the whole component in the whole component to increase the crop productivity. If you have a very good variety, even without any technology, I mean fertilizers and pesticides and also the soil, then will be expected a good output. But even in China, as an example, we have just mentioned 70,000 variety, but only a few popularized. Okay, so this is an important issue. You should choose the right variety to adapt the specific conditions. For example, drought tolerance varieties for the drier area. Okay, for the high productivity variety for the high production conditions of soil. So we need to put the right variety to the right farmland. And that's very important. Not all the varieties adapted to any kinds of the farmland. So this is very important in our cases. Yeah. So thank you.
If I may,
Please.
I think it's important to understand what technology is made for. Technology is a science solution. So it's going to be affected by demand and supply. And sometimes I think radically, a lot of varieties we release, I'm a plant breeder. No one actually asked for them. And so that's why they sit on the shelf. My point is, to move a variety or a technology down to the end user, there must be the demand for it. And you must have the capacity to supply it at the appropriate scale and scope. The challenge we have in many of the developing countries is the incoherence in how the national innovation system works. And so you find a lot of money may be spent on fertilizers, as an example, but very little money is being spent on agronomy, and even hardly any money spent on crop improvement. Varieties are very specific, or technologies sometimes are that specific. So you need to think about the whole broader ecosystem to get it to work. Finally, for most cases, agriculture produces food, and so it requires huge public sector support. And initially, public sector can play a big role, as we've had the case of Norway, to invest and drive demand, among others. But private sector is very good at last mile delivery. And the COVID story, we all know it. It was delivered by private sector. The technology was developed by public sector. And we can do that as well in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Professor Liu and to Patrick. I don't know if anybody else wants to take a stab at that one, or do we want to move on to the next question? So I saw someone in the back. Please identify yourself and who the question is addressed to.
I'm Mohamed Samu. I'm a student from University of Padua. I'm doing plant health. My question goes to Mr. Okori. The lack of brain drain, because of lack of infrastructure for talented scientists, specifically those from Africa, after gaining the required knowledge in developing nations, they are finding it difficult to go back to Africa to practice. In moving forward, what is your institution putting in place to ensure that you make your institution have all the basic necessity it requires to attract and retain those scientists who are contributing immensely in developing nations to go back to serve? And by extension, Mr. Louis, I also want to ask, which facilities have you put in place to support institutions in developing nations to develop their own science and technology instead of serving as market for China? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your pointed questions. Two things. Like I said in the beginning, knowledge is universal, but it's also important to know that growth is a process. And so, what are we doing as Forum? We recognize that we have got to create or support the growth or emergence of different centers of leadership. We prefer to use the terminology centers of leadership rather than excellence because of the competition connotation related to that. And these we are working with the national universities, most of them are public really, to strategically invest in certain areas of science within their countries or within the regions, the 5 regions of Africa, so that those places then become attracting places to train in topical areas, including climate science, earth sciences, and many other things. So that's one strategy, making sure that we have high quality places to do good science in Africa, but that will not happen overnight. That means, like I said, growth is a process. You must work with partners, leaders elsewhere to build that capacity. That is also going to take time. But more importantly, is also working on the mindset of our young people. Sometimes it's not really the institution. I trained in Sweden, I went back home, there was no biotechnology, and then we began to build the labs from scratch. and they're functioning. And so you need those elements, behavioral change from the young people, infrastructure, which is going to require north-south and huge investments by different partners. But more importantly, you also need to have programs that can run the infrastructure and also attract the youth to come back home to. So that's what we are trying to do. It's a long journey, but we are walking it day by day. And you're welcome back home.
Yeah, for SIDS, you just mentioned the first facility for the research. I think because the agricultural research, the research system is a very complex system. The current, to my opinion, I think any kind of a single innovation or facility innovation is not good enough to resolve finally the agricultural agri-food system problem. I think an integrated solution, for example, to combine the seed, the watering, and then the processing and the industry and processing, the whole chair is very important to consider that together. Okay, so currently in our case, we to set up, for example, a certain project to invite the scientists, not only scientists, but also the enterprise manager, industry manager, and also for the farmers joining. Then to ensure your research to meet the find under products, under markets needs. So that's very important for the integrated solution. You need to complete it, not a single facility or single technology innovation. Okay, in that case, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions either here on the floor or online? Looking around. I see someone, please, the young woman in the back.
Hello, everybody. My name is Edma Lauer, and I am a delegate from the Youth Intra-Dialogue for Europe and Africa. I arrived a bit late, so my apologies if my question has already been answered, but I just wanted to find out what can be done to bridge the gap between students from, let's say, developed countries and undeveloped, well, less developed countries or developing countries. And I ask this question because I've been myself privileged to be born and raised in Europe, but I currently live in Ghana, and I've seen the difference when it comes to graduates being employed in certain sectors just based on the degrees that they hold. And this is that certain students are favored than other students just because maybe they studied abroad or they studied in an university that is more accepted globally. So I want to find out what can be done to bridge the gap between education and quality education in developing countries, so graduates can have the same opportunity that other graduates around the world are having just based on research and innovation. Thank you.
Is your question directed at someone specifically?
No, it's for everybody.
Okay, so who would like to take a stab at that one? I see here two in the end, so please go ahead, Dr. Paulo, and then we can go to Moses.
I'm going to have to take a shot at it, but to start with something that I heard once, that is a very good question, and the answer is extremely simple. I don't know. The reason is, what you're asking for is something which is huge, right? The only way that I see to do it is to have in those places high quality education installed. I could maybe tell you a little bit about the history in Brazil, how we began our best universities. As I said, the University of São Paulo, we brought scholars from abroad, and we had them, work with local people and begin to develop a culture. For a number of years in Brazil, we had a strategy of sending students abroad for higher education, but especially for graduate studies, and then bringing them back and having them implement in the country such initiatives. Right now, we at the University of Sao Paulo are receiving students and graduate students and postdocs from Angola. Angola began a process in which they are sending people to certain universities, and obviously being a Portuguese-speaking country, this is a huge advantage with our university. And so the government of Angola is funding these students, these postdocs, to spend time at our university with the prospect of bringing them back afterwards and fostering locally. So the only way I see is there has to be, from the public administration, there has to be the will to foster such initiatives and bring it back home.
Thank you. Esther, please.
Yeah, from my experience in Fontagro, which is this organization that works in Latin America, we have seen that the number of PhD teachers, not students, but teachers that have the PhD level in certain countries of Latin America and Central America, it's low. So that's the first step to, if you want to have enough background of teachers to train also PhDs in the local universities. That's important. For certain years, there were help scholarships for Latin American students and teachers to do the PhD in Spain, and that was a very good experience, because after finishing the PhD, they would go back to their countries, take the lessons learned and their experience from the Spanish universities, and they were like the motor of change in their countries. They started in agriculture in particular. They are the leaders in the institutes for research in agriculture in those countries. So that was a great initiative, because after several years, there is no need to move so many students to developed countries, because they already have the nest for more tuition and teaching. So the mobility, as my colleague said, is important. It's crucial. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've run to the end of this question and answer session. It is now my pleasure to invite Deputy Director General Beth Bechdahl to deliver some closing remarks. I think we've heard a lot about diversity, partnerships, youth, women, and I think there's no one more uniquely placed to provide closing remarks than our Deputy Director General, who's a big supporter of all of the above. Deputy Director General Bechdahl, the floor is yours.
There we go. Thank you very much for allowing me to provide a few closing remarks to this really interesting exchange. Let me thank you, Angelica, for serving as our very capable moderator, and to all of the panelists for first being with us here in Rome for this very important week, for this Science and Innovation Forum, and so many of the other activities centered around the World Food Forum itself. I've really enjoyed sitting and listening to the insights and the different perspectives on the importance of research, science, and innovation. I'd like to sort of tie my closing thoughts and observations together really around what I sort of understood the session focus to be, which was really about translating and transferring much of the experience and the knowledge that has come from the countries, the regions that are represented here, to lower middle income countries, to the small island developing states. And as we've heard in different reference points throughout this conversation, from developed to developing, from global north to global south, I think there were so many interesting points that were raised about the importance of this transitioning and this transferability of knowledge and innovation and experience. I think it's very clear to say that these countries, whether they're LMICs or the small island developing states, lesser developed countries, they face really unique challenges. And these include limited resources, economic disparities, and environmental vulnerabilities. We've heard about droughts, about flooding, and we obviously heard from Mr. Manu today very clearly that there are other very devastating climate and environmental fragilities and sensitivities that are faced by a number of these countries. In fact, just last week, FAO released a new flagship report. I would encourage all of you to find this report on our website. It's called The Impact of Disasters on Agriculture and Food Security. And it shows the importance of investments in research and innovation, in knowledge, in development, and in resilience. And it shows very clearly, just as one particular data point, that over the last 40 years, the incidence of drought worldwide has doubled. So the intensity of what we are seeing in a number of these sensitive, vulnerable, and fragile settings is quite clear. It's very stark and it's very real. And for these reasons, the topics that were covered in this discussion around research, science, and innovation, it shows that there is opportunity for a transformative role for each of them to play. They can enable regions to address really complex issues around food security, climate change adaptation, and even more inclusive economic growth. During this panel, we got the opportunity to hear how science and innovation have transformed agri-food systems in countries like China, in Brazil, in Spain, and in Norway. But not all countries can follow the same path. Countries and regions, whether it's Tonga, whether it's the continent of Africa, have different realities, have different circumstances, have different needs. And as our Director General said during his opening remarks, and Patrick, you reiterated it, we cannot adopt a one-size-fits-all approach, whether it's to climate action, economic growth, inclusiveness, support of women and youth. We have got to have relevant and context-specific solutions. And here is a place where I think FAO more than ever is leaning in to show that science, research, technology, and innovation can be catalytic drivers for change. They play a critical role in production, crop-oriented agriculture, livestock agriculture, fisheries, and forestry practices, as well as their capacity to withstand climate change and protect the environment. Some of the takeaways that I think we heard from today's discussion are that, one, we need to make use of existing knowledge while still embracing and adapting the new discoveries that are coming at a very fast pace. It's the combination of the existing with the new that's really, I believe, going to unlock more of the adaptable, accessible, affordable, and available solutions, as I said, especially for those lower middle income countries, small island developing states, and others who are still in development stages. We have to invest in strengthening the research and innovation infrastructure and capacities in these countries. And we've heard here today, that means more support for public research institutions. I think many who know me here in the organization know that I'm a big champion of private sector engagement and cooperation, and we heard about the importance of that here today. But if we don't have both, if we don't have public research coupled with the kinds of private sector innovation, ingenuity, new research, and new applied last mile types of solutions, then we're not taking a comprehensive and a holistic approach to blending these. We've heard also about the importance of recognizing that partnerships need to be more collaborative. This is critical to bridging the gaps that we see, both in terms of innovation adoption, but also very critically in terms of investment. And finally, I think it's very clear that our engagement, our dialogues, our exchanges have to be as broad, inclusive, and diverse as we possibly can make them. We talk about focusing on women, on young talent, on indigenous communities, on the most vulnerable. We have got to make sure that the work that we are doing includes them in the discussions that we are having, in the solution finding and building. And we really need to make sure that that engagement is serious and that it is impactful. Finally, I would just say that as we really think about translation of this knowledge, translation of the need, and really finding ways that we can, I think, do more together, I just want to highlight that I really do believe, it was mentioned earlier, I think by Mr. Liu, that very useful mechanism really is South-South and triangular cooperation. We have a dedicated division to this framework and this approach here at FAO, and it's in place in order to foster collaboration, to build capacity development, to share knowledge, to transfer and provide new approaches to technology and innovation, and ultimately to motivate resource mobilization. As Patrick said, growth is a process. And we know that these types of transferability and translational opportunities, they take time and they require new ways of thinking. But when we have a framework like South-South and triangular cooperation to really connect the dots, as you might say, imagine the triangle, that's what we should be bringing together. And I think it shows from this very session, Angelica, that we've taken a priority to putting these different experiences, these different skill sets and ideas all together here on stage. So let me just close by saying I'm confident that together we can do more, we can do things faster, and we can do things better. And I believe that this session and others that we've had over the week here at the World Food Forum has definitely shown, Paolo, like you said, that there are common interests and needs. They're here. We've identified them. We have some very real, practical challenges that do exist. They can't be ignored. We can't look sideways. We can't put our head in the sand. We can't assume that they're all going to solve themselves without a lot of hard work and a lot of investment and a lot of new ways of thinking from all of us. But I come back to the common interests and common needs. And I think that's really what's going to open up the door for more of this kind of sharing and this kind of impactful demonstration of knowledge exchange and capacity building that we can take from experiences, panel like each of you have brought forward to this session, and to share those with other countries around the world that we know are in critical need of support. So thank you very much, Angelica, for letting me be a part of this session. Panelists, thank you so much for your contributions, and very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director General Bechtel, for inviting us to think outside the box, to partner, to collaborate, to leverage South-South cooperation, to bring in the voice of youth and women. all to enable research, science, and innovation in low middle income countries and small island developing states. Before I let you go, I wish to thank all of our panelists and speakers for their incredible contributions, including the Director General, who has had to leave because for other commitments. And now we also have Deputy Director General Bechtel. All of you on stage. I'd also like to thank all of the questions that came from the floor, the participation, and this enabled a very rich discussion. Lastly, I wish to thank everybody behind the scenes that made this happen, because this took a lot of work, and I wish to give all of you a big round of applause, and I close the session.